But it goes both ways. We need women to believe in themselves enough to be able to say, you know what, I don't tick every box, but I'm still going to go for it. Your male counterparts, if they tick 2 of those boxes, they will go for it, even if they don't have the experience. Really putting yourself out there, and it's okay if you don't get it. If it helps you be like, you know what, that was a great experience to learn from, I can continue to go forward.
Hi and welcome to the She Sales podcast. Today I have Regan Barker here. She's at Grant Thornton and she's head of revenue operations. Welcome.
Thank you so much. It's so wonderful to be here with you. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, glad you can make it. I know that you're up in Brisbane normally and today we're here in Sydney. So tell me, RevOps is kind of unusual.
It is. It's quite a new, area. So if I was to break down revenue operations or RevOps, essentially for at least me in professional services, it is about how do we make all activity the most productive activity, aligned and assigned with an ROI. So for me, very much sales driven. I'm a sales leader, but also how do we connect that into marketing and making sure that we get the most out of our marketing as well, and how, our top of funnel moves into our middle of funnel and then eventually and hopefully acquiring new and wonderful clients.
So it does sit between the sales and marketing team, or would you say it skews one side more?
Well, I think because traditionally I'm more a salesperson, if I was to think where this sits, naturally to me it's sales. What I would say is that it's a channel to connect the two teams. So while I may not be the owner or of one particular area of, say, marketing, it is about working collaboratively with them to be able to get the most out of all activity. So I think we'll see it evolve over time as it, becomes more ingrained. It's quite new to Australia, and I think I am probably the only RevOps head or lead in professional services that I'm aware of. So I think we'll watch this space and see how it kind of continues to evolve. Like most roles, we saw it with sales enablement as well. Sales enablement now has evolved into RevOps, for example.
I love it because I think that, you started seeing the chief of growth officers pop up, and then you've got this now sales enablement, sales ops, and it's breaking down the role of the sales team. There's so many types of roles that you can have, from a hunter to a closer to now managing really complex CRM builds and finding the opportunities and then focusing on retention. So I'm finding that department of sales is becoming so much more intricate, and people don't really think of sales as an actual profession.
You're right. If we were to think about it as a profession, traditionally it would be like door knocking, if you think about that, or, the car salesman or real estate. With sales becoming more complex, that's the answer of, well, what's happening to the buyers? When we think about what buyer journeys, buyer decision-making, parties, more and more complex, I guess on the other side of that, we need to make sure that we're matching that complexity with a level of behavioural and scientific data to be able to get the most out of sales teams, and then also to make sure that we're able to support the requests of those buying parties as well. How do they manage risk? How do you manage objections, access to information? There's so much of it. Most buying parties now are so big that, say, they wouldn't necessarily make a decision if there's no consensus, for example. So of course, that's going to make it more complex on the sales side as well, right?
Back in the day when I went to uni, I wonder if there is now a degree that you could do in sales, because I went more marketing and PR, and then you've become just really good at dealing with people and account handling. And then your boss says, you should help us with business development. And that's how you sort of stumble into it. But there's so much psychology, and I love the negotiation and understanding people and, taking them on a journey. But your journey, it started out in law, then banking, and then back to law again.
Or to accounting. Yeah, professional services, yeah.
Yeah, so tell me about that and how you feel like the sales landscape's changed over that time.
So if I think about my journey, professional services, I accidentally landed there, right? It was a time when I graduated with a business degree. During the GFC, roles were pretty tight at the time, and I was fortunate enough to be given an opportunity in a marketing role. I wasn't good at it. I was what I learned at university versus professional services marketing were completely different. Over time, obviously absorbed through a lot of hands-on experience, through further education. And I saw this opportunity, like with law, the benefit of good brand, marketing, and then eventually I moved into business development there as well. From there, I was given an opportunity to shift over into banking, and that to me was the biggest eye-opener, because while professional services is B2B, essentially, they're ran completely different. It's a partnership model. Everyone has equity in a business. They're all decision makers, multiple stakeholders, where if you think about banking, generally listed entities, chains of command, but then it's very much hunt, bring in money, focus on the win sort of thing. Great sales cultures, obviously, they'd have to be high performing. But then when moving back into professional services in accounting at Grant Thornton, I moved there primarily because of their values. Like, I loved their values. And so moving there, I saw this huge opportunity to bring in what is happening in banking around really quality sales and bring that back into professional services. Professional services being the service, you have to make sure things are efficient and, really, I guess, protect partner and client time. So overlaying proper sales methodologies, good practice, really understanding your clients. I think it's a huge and potentially missed opportunity across the industry, and it's something that I'm driving at Grant Thornton, but hopefully I'm hoping the rest of the industry really jumps on board with this transformation as well.
The stereotype for me is in banking, accounting and law. To me, it's like a male-dominated environment. How have you seen that as a female leader now? How did you get there, from the very beginning? How was it coming into those spaces and wanting to sort of rise in the ranks and get into sales?
I think there's a few things there. There's, in professional services, marketing and sales teams sit together. A lot of the marketing teams female. Male will generally be on the sales side for banking. Those females that are in there, probably some of the most highest performers I've ever worked with as well. So it's been extremely fortunate for me, at least, to have these wonderful mentors. I have seen it change over time, absolutely, which is fantastic. You want to make sure you have that diversity in the workplace. And for me, I think that there's a big piece around representation of, a range of genders, a range of people with different backgrounds, and that diversity of thought. Like, you have to focus on that. You want to be able to learn from everyone around you. So I think that, yes, there has been traditional male-dominated industries, but we're really seeing that shift, and I see it as a really exciting time, to be honest.
As a female in sales, has it always been easy for you?
No, absolutely not. It hasn't always been easy. I think there's a few things that I've definitely seen over my time, coming into professional services. You have to think a certain way, dress a certain way, be a certain way. Very, very early on in my career, I was once told by someone in HR to dress more feminine, for example. And I'm a very proud lesbian, and I don't dress according to what would be a traditional feminine sort of, fashion. Yeah. I think you are going to encounter, a level of bias. And, I think everyone encounters a certain level of that as a part of their career. But really, I think now there's this huge opportunity for us to lean into our authenticity and to be our own selves. I think that the more I rejected it, I wasn't necessarily successful during those times, but the more I lent into my authenticity, the more I focused on who I am, an androgynous woman, I found that people they would gravitate more towards that as well. It's a level of vulnerability, it's a level of trust, and whether or not that's as a leader, but then also as a salesperson, I think that that's really important as well.
So I started this podcast because I wanted to get more women into sales. Why do you think that there's not enough women in sales? Why consider a role in sales, especially when you think about it being quite male-dominated, especially in banking and finance, even law? What can a female perspective bring to those situations? Because I've seen excellent salespeople, whether they are male or female, especially in the hunter mentality. The ability that I've seen from women who can nurture and build a relationship and really listen to the client's needs, I feel like that is a touch more present in female attributes.
I think that attribute and the active listening piece, that to me would be the one that I would truly think that what I've seen, at least, women do really, really well. The flip side to it as well is, if I was to think about drivers of why to or not be in sales, a lot of the time it's safety. If I was to think more about, as a woman, I would lean more into the safety side of things. That to me is job security, which sometimes sales cannot be. I would think about it in terms of, what is my absolute take home consistently, where bonus structures definitely drive that performance as they should. But, if you were a woman with, a family that you're thinking about, you're naturally going to sway towards a career where you have that security more than necessarily a big payout potentially if you hit your targets. As what's in it for me, those drivers would evolve over time depending on what stage of life you are. And I think that sometimes as we probably need to think about, well, what's more appropriate at what stage of my life? As a career, your career shifts and changes along with the rest of your life, right? But then in terms of, on the flip side to that, why women would make and do make such fantastic sales reps, it is a level of consistency, active listening, more the EQ side of sales, which I think that, we're so bombarded on a digital side these days. I think that EQ, that human element of sales is going to continue to be, while I guess smaller in size, a huge impact in the broader sales process as well.
And with sales cycles becoming longer and longer, you kind of have to have that persistence, that nurturing, that ability to build that relationship over a long period of time. And I think that the old school assertive closer, sort of go in hard, negotiate hard, is less and less needed these days. It really is. I think that some people who are in marketing would do really well to also move over to a sales role, because they have that ability to understand tone of voice, messaging, getting the right message across to that prospect that you're trying to close. And if you think about how marketing has to come into the RFP processes to enable the sales team to do the closing. So I think there's a good sort of overlap there in skill sets. In terms of being male adaptive, I've found personally, in my 30s in particular, I've found that in order to be a leader in a sales environment, I'd have to be really assertive, pretty tough, never cry, like build a armor, which was quite male adaptive in my opinion. And now, having my own business, I feel like I've definitely leaned into being more empathy driven, softer, opening up, being a bit more vulnerable. And it's funny because one time, one of my bosses said to me, Ricky, you should be more vulnerable. And I just kind of looked at him, I'm like, you be more vulnerable. Like, it's kind of, what does that even mean? Have you felt that you've had to be male adaptive over the years?
Yes. Oh, absolutely. I have to be more maladaptive at times. What I would say to that, though, is my mentors, particularly three fantastic mentors of mine being men over my career, have actually challenged me in the sense that I've tried to be maladaptive and they're just like, it's not you. Like, be more you, lean into you. That's when you'll start to see things. When I was in banking, I had this one male leader who would say, I'd meet with him and I'd be like, I did this wrong. I should have done this. I should have done that. And he's like, whoa, hold on. Your male counterparts right now are coming in being like, I've done this, I kicked this goal, etc. And he's like, half of them you're like outperforming and you're coming in here critiquing. It's actually, fortunately, and I know not everyone is like this, fortunately for me, that in those adaptive moments, I've actually been called out to be more myself and trust myself more than ever before. And I think that if I was to think for women, create a supportive network around you, have male leaders and mentors challenge you to be yourself more as well, because I think that yes, vulnerability now as a leader, I think is wanted more from younger generations as well. And I find that I use vulnerability to, I guess, inspire and to motivate and to help drive. Like, if someone's made a mistake, I don't jump down their throat. It's more like, yeah, I've made those mess ups too. I've made those mistakes. This is how I've kind of adapted to that. And it's okay. You're like, you can make mistakes. I encourage it because it means that you're going to learn from it as well and really kind of like fail forward. So I know I'm talking in a bit of a roundabout way here, but I feel like we're in this new evolution of what leadership can be. And to an extent, it's not necessarily, male or female. It is for me that authenticity, that vulnerability, and really to understand, I guess, your audience as well, because generationally, we have 4 generations in the workplace now. 4 different sets of motivations, cultures, belief, you name it. So I think that you have to be able to change and adjust to that as well.
Yesterday, I was at a networking event and we all sat around a table, and it was good balance actually, male, female. And I brought up the topic of imposter syndrome. And every single female leader I've had on this podcast has brought up imposter syndrome. And one of the older gentlemen who's a founder, what is that? And I was like, wow, okay, that really tells us a lot, that a lot of men don't feel it. And I know that it is tied to, imposter syndrome is a female's thing. One, have you felt that yourself? And how would you mentor someone junior who's feeling the imposter syndrome to step up and take the lead?
I have experienced imposter syndrome multiple times throughout my career. When I first shifted into the role of, what is now head of RevOps, but originally it was head of sales enablement. When I first moved into that, I'd been pushing for this for some time and I got it. And then as soon as I got it, I'm like, oh my God, can I actually do this? Am I capable? Like, surely, I'm going to fail, like whatever it might have been. And I realized then that, for me, the only thing kind of holding me back was my own set of beliefs around what are my limits, really. And I think that that's where we as women do feel that imposter syndrome. But then, yes, the importance of how do you overcome it? How do you make sure that you can, continue to push those boundaries and own your space? So first of all, I checked in and was like, well, of course, my leader, and he hates, he's getting too much credit, Fraser McNaughton, he wouldn't have made me or put me in that role if you didn't trust me. So first of all, there's a reason you're there, and own your space. Second of all, you have to over time continue to change that narrative mentally as well. So more recently, I was an MC at a book launch of my own mentor, Luigi Prestonenzi's. He chose me as well to be that MC, and a huge part of his life and what a great achievement that was. I had the opportunity afterwards to reflect, and there was a moment where I was about to critique all the little mistakes I kind of made, and I'm like, yeah, but I also did a great job. And I feel that a couple of years ago I wouldn't have given myself that credit. So you do need to, I think, continue to challenge your thought process to overcome that imposter syndrome, and that's through checks and balances, right? There's a reason why people put you in those positions and trust you. You should own and trust your own capability. Like most female sales leaders, there's a reason why you are in that position. So own your space, I would say. Then teaching the next generation of that, show that you are owning your space. That first of all is like, okay, here is a woman that's proud of who she is, that's owning what she does, and then encourage them to shift their mindset to, I think, no matter whether you're in sales or whether in a completely different function, if you're focused on growth mindset, then that imposter syndrome has no chance.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I think if you have a really strong vision, ambition, just keep doing the things. Sometimes, you do sort of have to take that job and maybe it's not quite where you want it to be, but it is a stepping stone in the right direction. And it is that opportunity to build your confidence up and go, tick, I can do that. What's next? Yeah. Take on the challenges. So let's switch gears a little bit, because I love talking about account-based marketing, and a lot of people don't know what that is. And I feel like I'm hitting my head against a brick wall sometimes, because I'm like, it's the new way. It's not really new, but it is. And so tell me, if you were to describe account-based marketing to someone who had no flipping idea, but they are in sales and marketing, how would you explain that to them?
Okay, so traditional marketing is very much one-to-many, right? If we think about distribution channels, it's you go out, you send out information, people receive that information. There's obvious stages around your top level brand awareness, etc. How I would say in terms of ABM, it does really flip marketing on its head. It also flips sales on its head. So it is a highly, programmatic, strategic way of grouping a level of customers, and it's in either one-to-one, so me to you, my organization to your organization, one to few, so being that my organization out to a set of an ICP, whether it's 10 or 20 customers with the same firmographic detail, so same industry, location, revenue, those sort of things, and really targeting the messages to that organization, but then also the buyers within it. So say, for example, for professional services, a lot of our buyers would include CFOs, like CEOs, non-executive directors, finance managers, tax managers, etc. So when I'm thinking about sending out, a particular piece of information, irrespective of channel, is it relevant to that role and that particular buyer? So it becomes very programmatic to the point where you end up shifting away from this idea of a marketing qualified lead, right? And you're now thinking about a marketing qualified account. So if I was to look at a buying party, particularly in professional services, and this figure comes from Sixth Sense and Green Hat research across APAC, is that the buying party has now moved to 15.3 people. So if I'm going to be nurturing and going to one individual, I still have 14.3 other individuals, different drivers, different opinions, different motivations within an organization. So really ABM helps our, what I'm hoping to achieve with ABM, go out and nurture the whole buying party based on issues relevant to them. I hope that helps.
Absolutely. I love it because obviously I'm doing this day in, day out, and it's so great to hear it from someone else. So just to clarify, ideal customer profile is not the account, it's the people within it. So for me, I pick an account and look at, the characteristics of that account suit the business that I'm trying to get a new business meeting for. And then within that company, so I look at the company profile, I look at, who's who within that organization. Oh, wow, look, there's a new CEO that's been there for 9 months. That is perfect because they'll be looking for something new and fresh in that space, and we should talk to them. But then I do look at connecting the dots and think, okay, well, we probably want the COO in there and the CFO. And like you say, most buying committees are getting larger and larger, sales cycles longer and longer. So it is really important to have those people in the room. How do you go about mapping that out? It's complex.
Very, yeah, absolutely. And so I almost even take a step back from that. There's, for us in professional services, I'll just talk specifically to that for the moment. An ideal client profile for me helps give the partners that I work with like a guiding star, like that North Star that we can kind of focus on. So historically, if I asked a partner that I'd be coaching or advising, who is your client base, they'll be like, oh, a bit in this industry, a bit in that, over here, this size, that size, public, private, like whatever. This here with ideal client profile is like, right, let's be really precise, because what we can do is then we can look at not just say your biggest client, we can look at the details of that client, break it down, and then find more clients exactly like that with the same issues that are tackling the same, challenges across the market. And then we're able to repeat, that process, but then gain insights to deliver to these organizations true value. And so then you go down one layer of buyer personas, then that's the roles within those organizations. So, it is that CFO, COO, as you mentioned. For me, it helps create a level of efficiency. We look at buying cycles being much larger now, 16.7 months for professional services. And so a lot of that, buyers are going through 60 to 75% of the way without even engaging with vendors. So they're already going through, they've done their internal research, they've spoken to their stakeholders, they've almost developed their scope before even coming to other accountants, which is just incredible. So we need to make sure that we use that ideal client and the science behind it to be very precise in our sales outreach and approach going forward as well.
Have you heard of is it 7-11-4? So there's 7 buyers typically in an organization that need to be involved, around 11 touch points to get them to say yes to a meeting, and you should focus on 4 channels to reach them. But I actually think that the touch points are probably more around like 30.
Yeah, it will be similar to that. Ours is the 15.3. The touch points have to be separated into human, non-human. So the Forrester research a few years ago was around, I think it was 17 to 19 touch points. Half of those were human, the other half were non-human. So you have to think, your human being phone call, face-to-face meeting, coffee catch-ups, etc., event, and then your non-human being, yes, your distribution channels of email, webinar, LinkedIn, whatever, or any social media for that matter, but you have to really, it has to be a very ecosystem approach, if that makes sense.
You could end up investing a lot of money into several different approaches and connecting that. But I think that if you look at how long the buying cycle is and spreading out those touch points over a period of time, to have one event in that year that then has a follow-up of a phone call and then something in the post and then, a digital touch point, I think that it's worthwhile investing in that long thought out journey, because your buyers need to be feeling connected with you over a long period of time.
And isn't ABM the answer to that when we think about it, account-based marketing? Because it is so programmatic over time, and then it takes them on a journey to eventually become a marketing qualified account rather than that lead again. So I think that's really, really important to think long-term and not just about one individual transaction. The piece is that goes very much into shifting into key account management as well, right?
When you think about how sales and marketing need to come together in an account-based approach, that's my biggest challenge. A lot of organizations, they work in silos. How important is it that they work together on this ABM approach?
I think so. Marketing and sales is two sides of the same coin, and they have always, there is that misalignment across a range of organizations. I've even heard in broader teams that I work in or have worked in around, well, I don't need to know that because that's marketing. I've become a much higher performer learning more about both sides than focusing on one. And especially in today's world, marketing isn't now just a top of funnel. It goes all the way through. And in fact, you're going to get more interaction through marketing channels than you will on the human sales side. Only 17% of time is spent with sales reps now of a buying journey. And that's through Gartner research that was released a couple of years ago. So if that's happening, salespeople need to know what, the roles of marketing and potentially leverage it more or be a part of it. I'm not opposed, and I probably see that a fusion over time. We've heard it bubble up around like smarketing, sales marketing together, but I do wonder if that's going to be the new way going forward. We definitely see it in B2C organizations. Like I think that how we can kind of grasp it in B2B and, particularly professional services may take a bit longer, but it's already there, right? So, if you are only looking at one way of doing things, your competition will outdo you.
So if I was a CEO and I have traditionally hired a head of sales, a head of marketing, and they're currently working in silos, have you seen along the way how from the top down we've been able to bring those together?
So fortunately for me, it's under the same banner, the sales and marketing. So it makes it a lot easier. I have this fabulous extended team that I work with and some of the best marketers that I've ever been exposed to. Our head of marketing operations gets it. Like he, in fact, I wouldn't be as successful at it as I am at Grant Thornton if it wasn't for him and his team, like hands down incredible. But this as well is this the evolution of where, instead of your CMO, instead of your CSO, it is your CRO, because that is your combined making sure that you get the most out of your marketing and be able to close on the sales side and bringing the two together. So to me, I'm already kind of seeing it. And in fact, we're driving it. What's fortunate for me is that while I'm in revenue operations, I have this incredible extended team that really know what they do to continue to teach me on being better as well. So let's see.
Absolutely. I actually wrote down yesterday about how doing ABM is 15% more profitable for the business and 19% faster to close the deal.
To close deals.
Yeah.
There's a book called ABM is B2B and backed by Forrester as well. It's only 1% of marketing qualified leads become clients or customers as well. So very much to that is that, if you do push into ABM, it actually gives you, forget the number of marketing qualified leads. You are now looking at creating those faster sales cycles and also opportunity for account growth. So having to really reduce that acquisition cost as well.
Yeah, I had the conversation this morning with a business in the enterprise SaaS space. Their biggest problem was lead quality and then being ghosted, right? So if it's a lead quality problem, then the way that account-based marketing flips that, you said it flips it on its head, right? The lead generation model, because you're no longer wasting time filtering all of the inbound inquiries. You've pre-selected your most ideal clients that if you look at that list and you go, that's golden. If we get any one of those in front of us, we know that's a perfect fit. We're not going to be meeting with tire kickers, right? So have you found how that works in terms of improving lead quality? And do you also look at the inbound as well?
So my team owns inbound. In fact, that's how we started out. So if I think about, the end-to-end piece, SaaS companies will always have challenges around quality, but it hands down will always kind of occur. We did have, I guess, or we still do, inquiries come through that are potentially a sole trader and things like that. What used to historically happen is those would be filtered out through partners. Partners are really busy. They'd look at it and be like, oh, you know what, I'll get to that later. And then they may get to it later, and some of them are very good. Sometimes it would slip through the cracks, right? So we'd wanted to isolate and say, hey, what if we use this channel? We'd own it, and then we'd qualify or pre-qualify to get you to a discovery call with the right ideal client profiles and go through that process. Now, what we found is that we were able to quickly say no, saving partner time. That's wonderful, right? And then saying yes quicker. So I have two wonderful up and comers in this area. They, responding within the 20 minute to an hour period, your most ideal time to reach back. With that, because we've created this client experience around it and overlaid best practice sales, we have been able to increase that channel by revenue. It was double, it's now triple. We hit last year's targets last month. So it's continuing to grow. So that to me is if we know our ideal client, we're out there, from a marketing perspective, generating the right leads, then that inbound channel continues to grow. And then also we're pivoting to also look at that ABM, which I'm still very much in the build stage of that. It's still quite new to us, but we do want to make sure that we're looking at every channel as best as possible, because for us in professional services, it's still a human-led organization, and we never want to lose that. So it's more about what levers do we pull, what can save partner time, what can help increase revenue. And also for me, a big passion project is making sure these partners get their dream practice. So I want to work with people that love what they do and really support the clients that they want to work with, and create this ecosystem where, we're all proud of our contributions as well. So pulling each of those at different times, I think, is really important.
So AI is a big topic at the moment, and there's various different ways that it can be applied, I guess, on the sales and marketing side. And there's a lot of fear, especially in the younger generation, that AI is going to replace roles. How are you using it, and do you think that they're right to be fearful of it?
So AI is a pretty incredible topic. It can be discussed as a full podcast, right? For me, and I was talking to our head of IT training yesterday around AI, and she was telling me about how a lot of organizations say, here are your use cases, use them this way. And that way it almost decreases curiosity, but then it also increases this fear of I'm one day going to get replaced by this. But if I look at what we've done at GT more broadly, is that we've actually been able to say, here are some platforms. Be curious, explore. You tell us where you're gaining efficiencies. We're an organization with a 9-day fortnight, right? So which is extremely fun. And what a privilege to be able to have that as well. But that to us means that we have the onus on us to be more efficient, making sure that we're looking for new ways to work, but also make sure that quality and our client experiences is still at the forefront of what we do. So what we've actually done is roll out a lot of Microsoft AI, and from our original pilots to now, I think it's a 3.45 hours saved per week. And if we're on a 9-day fortnight, that gain there gives us that leverage. So I think that's pretty fantastic. And where I'm kind of driving it from a sales perspective at the moment, and this is where a big part of what we do is on LinkedIn, particularly with our ideal client profiles, we're able to build out our targets. I have this great support network at LinkedIn where they've given us the opportunity for the second time in a couple of years to be a part of their beta testing process. So they have launched and publicly known around Seller Agent, and we're able to use that technology to test and trial and be more efficient, or how we can be more efficient in our sales processes as well. And then that will then soon be rolled out to the rest of the world, but to us it gives us almost this like, I guess, opportunity to have a head start as well, which is fantastic.
No, that's really amazing.
For me, it's like, don't get caught up in being fearful about it. I think for me it's more about if we can have that growth mindset. No matter what, if you have that growth mindset, you will be able to be more adaptable and adapted to this new pace of change. With that as well, keep investing in learning. I think that, trial new things, don't be scared of failure, because the best thing that you can do is use those learnings to continue to propel yourself forward.
I think it's interesting, isn't it, the term growth mindset? Because I think you need to have that as an individual. How do you look for that in a candidate if you were hiring?
Actually, two questions that I always ask in terms of like candidates when they're coming in is, what research did you do to prepare for this interview? And that to me is the proactiveness. So if they might say, I looked at your website, I did this, I read this article, whatever. And it's like, oh, great. Tell me something you learned that you didn't know yesterday. It could be anything. But if they fumble over that to me is like, okay, you're not learning from the opportunities that you're given. I think the other piece for me is around like, if you were to get this job, what's the first thing you'd do? And to me, I think that if it's talking to other people about their experience, you're more likely going to get people that will adapt and change. And that, like, very, very simple questions. They're not that complex at all. But I want to know how people would deal with new things coming their way, essentially. Because, I've worked with people that have a growth mindset and those who haven't. And to me, you can be taught any skill, but you can't be taught attitude, right? Like, it's a very hard thing to kind of change fixed mindset to growth. Whereas if you have that already, like, the world's your oyster, honestly. It's only you that can like create limitations, essentially.
I always say that. I always say the attitude, not necessarily skill. And especially in sales, right? You've got to have that tenacity, the get up and go. And I think that when you're talking about having job security and safety in sales, it's also one of the most diverse and challenging roles that you can have, because if you think about, you've got to be on the numbers, you've also got to articulate a message, you've got to work out the timing, you've got to have the psychology of trying to work out, what the person really needs and when, and, be able to use data, pull reports together. It's just so much multifaceted, I feel. So we talked about adaptability and change. What do you see over the next 5-10 years you feel like it's going to change in the landscape quite a bit?
Changes that I'm already seeing that I think will kind of continue. The fact that a lot of buyers will want less human interaction. We're seeing it at a B2C level. If you look at forgive me, I don't know the stats off the top of my head, but more and more we're seeing this growth of not wanting to have a human seller in the back end. But what I think will happen is it will almost come 360, because what's happening with those transactions is that they end up being like SaaS. There's integration and change management failures as a part of those. So I think that we're going to see it much more as like this evolution into more buyer enablement from a sales and buying perspective. I think it's still going to continue to be more complex. But this is where I see where AI can help you. Like, let's kind of use AI to break down some of those barriers and challenges to be able to give you better access to those buyers or better information to help enable buyer decision making as well.
Actually, it reminds me of a bit of a completely different industry and how it's boomeranged around. So you take like dating apps like Bumble, for example, and everyone did a mad dash on it, got to be on an app, and that was fantastic. But I've noticed more lately people exiting apps and actually wanting to go to traditional speed dating, in-person run clubs, right? And they want that human interaction. They're tired of the digital swiping and not, you'll see people craving that human interaction and the swiping. And I feel like that doesn't necessarily stop at personal relationships. I do think that translates to business relationships and how people, I get asked all the time, can we meet face to face? So I've made that a part of my sales process where I'll reach out randomly to a hot list and say, hey, I'm up in Sydney, which I did this time. I'm up in Sydney for 2 days, wondering if you're around for a coffee. The response rate was really high because I wasn't pitching anything. I actually just want to meet people and see who I'm going to connect with. And it's surprising how many people do still want that. But I wonder if that's also a generational thing, because I think the younger generation coming in are probably going to be more on the tools than they are in person.
Maybe there's two pieces to this I think we can kind of deep dive on. There is the platinum rule, which is treat people how they want to be treated. So it's not necessarily how I want to be treated, and I shouldn't treat you how I want to be treated. I should treat you how you want to be treated. So if you want face-to-face, I'm going to come and meet you face to face. How you buy as an individual consumer, it's how you buy in B2B, right? So if you think about, for example, cost of living, you're going to be more cost conscious in the boardroom as well. If you are thinking about, I want efficiency, I don't want a human, I like how I love Uber or whatever, you'll want that in your B2B experiences. So for generations, it is like, I'd much prefer to, go to the shops, be served by some like a human and then walk out. That you will want the face-to-face, and you have to think that is very generational as well. So the way, I guess, your older generations would buy very much with the human element, but that will continue to evolve over time with your new entrants of generations being more digital. But like you said, full circle, if, in a couple of years we're so sick of digital, we will start to kind of see that creep up again.
One of the passions that I have is still having that experiences in the sales journey and making it experiential and bringing to light how can you use some of that experiential, like you see some amazing events out there, but how can we put that into the B2B world rather than it just be like lunches and conferences and the usual. And I think the larger companies out there like the Salesforces and the AWSs of the world, they'll put like on events with concerts and Dua Lipa's there, and they've gone really wild with it, but that's I guess for a select group of people, but to do that on a smaller scale, I think is really important, especially that one to few selling. Have you seen any examples of that where it's worked really, really well?
Look, I mean, in professional services, we're still pretty traditional. So there's been, I guess, for us, the experience side, and this is something that I'm incredibly proud of. We have a brand ambassador, Jess Fox, Olympian, phenomenal human being. What professional services firm has this incredible athlete as their brand ambassador? And, we've been very fortunate for her to have come and spoken to a lot of our clients. She's spoken at conferences of our people. She's done a national tour around our offices. That has been a different experience at really bringing the human story back into the conversation as well, which I think is quite brave for professional services to do. And we've seen great impact from that. And I think that, to focus on, I guess, this fantastic athlete, a female athlete, and celebrate her success and see the synergies between, what her individual core values are and how they match to ours. It's something that I think we at Grant Thornton can be very proud of.
Yeah, it's very unusual actually, especially in that industry. And how do you pick who that person is?
Yeah, well, I mean, that could be a whole nother podcast, right? Yeah. And to be honest, I can't have any claim to that. Our extended marketing brand team, our CMO, Fraser, our executive team, all kind of worked on that. And it's, I think if I was them, I would say that was a real win in their careers. It's fantastic.
We talked a bit at the beginning about getting more women into sales is definitely something that this podcast is showcasing. How do you feel like organizations could or should enable that to happen? How do we create more diversity, reduce the gender gap? Lots of really big questions. I know that's a whole nother podcast again. But how can we help get more women into sales, do you think, as organizations?
Access, I think, first and foremost. And then ensuring that we don't try fit a mold. What I've found for my team and the women coming into sales is that, you try not to, I guess, recruit for the role as much as recruit for like an opportunity of what they can kind of become. And so, for me, like skills like active listening, the growth mindset, the attitude, look for that and to be able to give that opportunity. To those that are thinking about it though, I would say, a lot of women would not put themselves forward for a role unless they ticked every box. So I would say to that, if there is a role, go for it. If you think that you'd be great, or if it's on your career path, whether you're skilled or not, try. Work hard in preparation to give yourself the best opportunity. But it goes both ways. We need women to believe in themselves enough to be able to say, you know what, I don't tick every box, but I'm still going to go for it. Whereas like your male counterparts are more likely, if they tick 2 of those boxes, they will go for it, even if they don't have the experience. So really putting yourself out there, and it's okay if you don't get it. If it helps you be like, you know what, that was a great experience to learn from, I can continue to go forward. On the gender pay gap piece as well, like I think that a lot of organizations have to learn around that. I've been fortunate enough to work in an organization where, we covered that and addressed that many years ago, which is fantastic, wonderful work by our P&C team there and our executive. But for a lot of organizations, start looking at that and start looking at it now, because people do talk about their pay, whether it's on their agreement to keep it silent or not. If you're known as an organization that favors, one gender over another, you're not going to attract the right talent.
The brand perception starts from the inside, doesn't it? How people talk about the business. That's really fascinating. I think that what's interesting as well from my personal upbringing, I think that firstborn child, my father was quite tough, and I don't think that I was ever treated like a girl. I think he actually wanted a boy. So I think that there's that sense of resilience and go, and I've rarely felt like, oh, I should not apply for that job. I've actually been the opposite. Just give it a go. Maybe they'll say yes, just on the off chance. I wish I could give that away to people, women in particular, or anyone who just feels a sense of not enough. And I think that it's like, why not think of it like a lottery? Obviously you have the right skills and attributes, but sometimes, like we say, attitude goes a long way.
Absolutely. And I think that you need to put yourself forward, because what if you do succeed? Like really, what if you just jump right in and you're actually given the recognition straight away, or given the opportunity? I think that that's kind of what I've learned along the way. And if I was to think back to, early on in my career, if I had belief in myself, I would have arrived here much, much earlier, because I had the capability or the learning or the growth mindset, etc. But you do need to back yourself. You are in the driver's seat of your career. If you want to be in sales, be in sales. It doesn't start off in one organization, get something on your CV to then work towards that dream of where you want to work. Know that no one's going to come tap you on the shoulder and be like, hey, come work in it might happen, but you have to be in the driver's seat. So really own that. So if I was to say one piece of advice for someone that wants to be in sales, or someone that wants to do a dual role, marketing, sales, whatever, is that get a great mentor. Not a good mentor, a great mentor. Even test a few out. Get someone in your corner that backs you, that believes in you, that helps you believe in yourself. Because sometimes it is that the belief that someone else has in you will eventually come through and be like, oh yeah, I can own my space now. So get a good mentor, start out, put yourself out there, and that will hopefully push you and propel you forward to that role in sales.
Some of the female leaders that we've had on this podcast have said, I've been super lucky. I was lucky at this point in time. But I think that there's need to reduce the word lucky, because you evidently went for it. You were in the right place at the right time, and there was something about you that got that opportunity. It wasn't someone else.
Yeah,
So
I worked hard. I put myself forward for an opportunity. I was given the right for that.
So, look, it's been a really wonderful and diverse conversation. Thank you so much for coming on to the podcast and joining me. I've thoroughly enjoyed it. I think we do have another episode in there somewhere.
I'm down for it, absolutely.
Yes. And if anyone wants to reach out to you or connect with you, what's the best way to do that?
LinkedIn, Regan Barker. Definitely connect with me. I'm very happy to talk to particularly women in sales that want to be focusing on developing their career. Feel free to reach out. Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Excellent. Thank you.